This video was brought to you by my loyal patrons. Pledge today and receive exclusive perks. Link in the description.
Toby and Henrietta were enjoying their new job on the island of Sodor. But they do look old-fashioned and did need new paint. James was very rude whenever he saw them. "Yuck! What dirty objects," he would say. At last, Toby lost patience. "James," he asked, "why are you red?" "I am a splendid engine," answered James, "ready for anything. You never see my paint dirty." "Oh," said Toby innocently, "that's why you once needed bootlaces, to be ready, I suppose." James went redder than ever and snorted off. It was such an insult to be reminded of the time a bootlace had been used to mend a hole in his coaches.
So I've been busy with my model trains lately, updating all my Thomas engines for 00 scale. Many are getting new paint jobs, they're all gaining sentience with faces, and there's even a few new fellas on the workbench that I haven't shown before. Last time we covered the first of my new era models, Daisy. Today I'll go through the next two that I've completed, Toby and James. I think it's appropriate that we cover these two together, because they are one of the funniest duos.
"I'm an important engine. Never late, always on time. That's me." "Shut up," replied Toby.
We'll start with Toby, since he won't take that long to talk about. I never made a video on my Toby before, and I think that's because I didn't think there was that much to talk about with him. Toby is easy. He is canonically a J70 class tram engine. So my model is a virtually unchanged Rapido J70 tram engine, with some paint applied to make him look like Toby. In the books, Toby's livery is a bit different from the TV series. The TV series never gave him a new look following his arrival to Sodor. He's always consistently worn his darker brown and gray skirts. In the books, Toby's body is in its usual brown, and all his frames are left in a light tan beige color, which I really like. It gives him some definition. His skirts are also painted blue. Now, I've always taken this to mean that Toby is technically in the Northwestern Railway's official blue livery, but since he's mostly made of wood, only the metal parts of him got painted. The shade of the blue varies from book to book. Sometimes it's a darker sort of indigo, but I prefer it being in the same blue as Thomas, Edward, etc., for the sake of consistency. Previously, I brush painted all the paint on. Tan was a matte paint from Tamiya, and the baby blue was an acrylic from Blick, the same blue that I used on Thomas and the others. The update saw new paint added. I've become a glossaholic, and I've been updating most of my engines with gloss paint jobs, at least the ones that they make sense on. Salty, for example, does not need a gloss finish. He's supposed to be grubby. The new gloss blue I'm using is a slightly darker shade that pops more. It's PS30 Brilliant Blue by Tamiya. Now, I apologize for the lack of photos here. I didn't do a very good job of documenting Toby, so I'll just talk over this footage of me holding him. The skirts on the Rapido J70 are actually designed to come off, so you can access the valve gear and side rods on the wheels. I popped those off, sprayed them with primer, and then sprayed the Tamiya blue on top of that. The rest of the blue on Toby on his ends here, I brush painted on. I also spruced up the red on his buffer beams with a red gloss, and applied a new 7 decal on the sides. These number decals are 1930s LMS ones by Fox Transfers, which are the ones I think everyone uses. Toby's face is taken from the Bandai Nakayashi toy. I was a bit limited on Toby face options. The J70 is pretty small, and not many Toby toy faces fit it. And the ones that do, not the biggest fan of, because I wanted this specific grinning expression for him. To me, this is Toby, and the Nakayashi is one of the only Toby toys to give him this expression. Thankfully, it was a near perfect fit. All I had to do was sand the back of it so it laid flat, and paint the teeth white. And that's Toby, one of the easiest customs in the collection, and is the one that I would recommend to anyone starting out. He requires minimal work, and 0 mods to the body itself. He is unfortunately not the smoothest runner, and I'm not really sure why. I have another Rapido J70 that runs just fine, so I guess I gotta open him up and figure out what's going on with him. Maybe his gears just need to be lubricated, or his wheels are dirty. Who knows? Let's move on to James now. James is my most recent completion, and is easily my favorite model in the collection at the moment. He required quite a bit more work than Toby did, so let's get into it. Now James is a model I was really happy with when I first built him a few years back, and I kinda grew to dislike it over time. Canonically, James is a Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway Class 28 locomotive, with an extended front to accommodate a leading pony truck. This, of course, doesn't exist ready to run in 00, so if you remember, I opted to use something that looked similar. I used a Bachmann X Great Central J11 class for him, because I felt its shape was very close to how James looks in the book illustrations. I modded the front with modeling wood to give him that extra space for a front pony truck. Now it's not that I thought it looked bad, but I felt I could do better. And over time, the more I do research on the characters for other videos, the more I've grown to respect the prototypes that Audrey chose for them. I always had it set in my mind that whenever I redid James, I would use a lore-accurate Class 28 shell. Well, the time came, and I just couldn't do it. The more I looked at my model, the more I realized I really liked my James. I put so much work into it, it'd be a shame to just discard it all. So, I decided to keep it, and made some changes. The biggest thing I wanted to change was the tender. The tender that James previously used was the one that the J11 came with, simply because I didn't have another spare to use at the time. I never liked how the tops flared out like that. Now my Edward is a model that I plan to completely redo from the ground up. He was one of my first ones, and is the one that I dislike the most. The D16 seemed cool at the time, but this just isn't Edward in my opinion. It's way too big. So I had no issue in using him for spare parts. Edward's tender is a Monsell 6-wheeler, taken from a Bachmann N-Class. Before committing, I took some photos of both models, and did a quick edit in Photoshop to see how the tender would look behind James. I liked it, so I locked in. Now the two tender bodies are almost the same size, the keyword there being almost. The J11's tender has pickups wired to the body, so I didn't want to disuse its chassis. The Monsell tender was just a tad too short to fit on top of it, so instead of going through hell trying to completely rewire the new tender to the J11 body, I decided to just trim its chassis down until the Monsell body fit onto it. There we go! A perfect fit. I didn't take many photos of this process, but something else that I did was clean up the front extension to the running board. I sanded the sides down some more, applied some Tamiya putty on it, and then sanded that until it was as flat as I could get it. It's still not perfect, but it's a hell of a lot cleaner than it was before, and you would never notice from a distance. 5-foot rule, right? Time for paint. I taped over the cab and tender interiors, and gave the body and tender a coat of primer spray. Once that was dry, it was time for red. I tried out two different red glosses, Tamiya's standard PS2 red, and their TS49 bright red. The bright was a bit too bright for my liking. The standard red is what I use for the engine's buffer beams, so it made sense to me to just paint all of James in that same color. I gave him a few coats, and let him dry. And here he is, all glossy now, already looking so much better. Next step was to apply the blacks, which I brush painted on. Now, something I took note of on real working steam engines is that their smoke boxes are usually never glossy like their paintwork. The smoke box gets very hot, so the paint always gets dirty and has this matte look to it. I'm applying that to all my engines moving forward. The smoke boxes will be painted in a matte finish, creating a nice contrast between it and the glossy, colorful part of their liveries. For all the black parts of the engine, I'm using Tamiya Flat Black. Parts like the handrails and reverser rod were painted in silver, and his whistle and safety valve in bronze. And I couldn't not paint his dome in its iconic shiny gold. On my previous James, I lined the entire body with dark blue lining. I like the idea that James's livery mirrored the Skarloey engines, almost like he saw them while he was being repaired at Groven's Gate, and chose that livery when Sir Topham allowed him to be repainted. But I decided to change it up this time. He still has his blue lining, which is .35mm blue lining from Fox, but his boiler bands are now gold, as they are in the illustrations. And I think the contrast between them and the red is fantastic. He looks so ornate now. For these, I just used gold decorative tape and cut it into tiny strips with an X-Acto knife. Another change I made was I kept his cab roof red, a trait exclusive to him in the books. I applied some new lamp irons and a vacuum pipe on his front, all of which I pulled off of Edward. The lamp irons that I'd previously placed here fell off over time. I guess the glue I was using back then wasn't the strongest. I also trimmed off the front portion of his handrails that wrap around his smoke box, just to make it look a bit more like James. And with a big number 5 added to his tender sides, James's livery was complete. He only needed one more finishing touch: a face. When it comes to James toys with accurate faces, thankfully we have quite a lot to choose from, but it was a matter of finding ones that would be the right size. My top pick was the smiling expression from his Brio toy, which looks really accurate, I think. Too bad Brio Jameses cost an arm and a leg on eBay, and I was not about to spend over $40 on a toy just to rip its face off. The wooden Busy Bee James has a perfect, and I mean perfect, angry expression. I found a used one that was missing its tender, and bought it. What a perfect fit. I couldn't have asked for it to look any better. It's the exact size of the smokebox door. And don't worry all, I've learned to use a Dremel to cut the faces off this time. I didn't totally massacre the poor thing like I did with Daisy. I also tried out this pullback James that I don't know the maker of. The face is pretty accurate, though unfortunately is a bit too small for my liking. I guess until I find a Brio James for cheap or some other alternative, James is stuck being angry for now, which I'm fine with. James's angry face is my favorite expression of his. It fits him. He always has something to complain about. Now, many of you are probably wondering at this point, why don't I just use 3D printed faces? Well, I actually think I prefer 3D printed faces, and I have quite a few for Bachman Thomas models. The honest answer is that I just don't like painting them. They're so annoying to get right. So for now, I'm happy with temp ones from the toys. Eventually I will make the switch, but for now I'd rather enjoy the simplicity of plopping on a face that's already professionally painted. I'm not too fussed about it either, because for now, when I film, I can just edit the expressions and eye placements in post with Photoshop, and motion track them in After Effects. At this point, I thought James was done, and took him to the layout for testing. I did some filming with him, and it was here I realized that the gap between his tender and body is huge. Unfortunately, I can't tighten it up at all. The bar that couples the two together is just that long, and probably has to be so it can clear radius 2 curves. So I tried something else to hide the gap. I gave the tender doors. These are pieces of gift card that I cut with an X-Acto knife and painted. They're not a perfect fix to hide the gap, but I think it definitely looks better. Fun fact, James never had cab doors in the show. Haha, now you can't unnotice it.
James was fuming when he heard the news. "I'm going to be late." "My fault," said the signalman. "I didn't understand about Toby." "Now, James," said his driver, "you'll have to push Toby." "What, me?" snorted James. "Me? Push Toby and pull my train too?" Grumbling dreadfully, James set off to find Toby. He came up behind Toby and gave him a bump. "Get on, you!" James had to work very hard. When he reached the workstation, he felt exhausted. Some children were on the platform. Cool! The express is late, and it's got 2 engines. I think James couldn't pull it on his own, so Toby had to help him. Never mind, James, whispered Toby. They're only joking. Huh, said James. Toby just smiled.
I am so happy with how both of these guys turned out. James especially. He is easily my favorite in the collection so far. I am so glad that I didn't start over completely with him and just made changes to what I already had. I think the J11 makes for an excellent James, with the right mods of course. I have plenty more engines on the workbench, and some of them are so close to completion. A few of these only need lining, and they are done. I'm not entirely sure who will be covered next, but there is a little green caterpillar here who seems ready to stretch his new wheels. This pick of the week has nothing to do with Toby or James or model trains, but everything to do with Railway Series lore. Sodor's Mysteries Solved! Huge Thomas lore reveals for 2026 by Sodor Island Models. He recently got in touch with Christopher Audrey and got several questions answered. That's right, even more new lore in 2026, including the engine who replaced Duck as Tidmouth Station pilot, the names of the coffee pot engines, and much more. A short video, but quite informative and to the point. Go eat up that delicious, yummy lore. Last weekend, I attended the Great America Train Show in Puyallup, Washington, and I met a lot of great people there. I was asked to shout out a channel called Maithwaite Mafia. Great name, by the way. It's a channel run by a group of fans just having fun. Toy reviews, let's plays, silly videos, the works. Go check them out. Link below. Now, I don't have much of an update for you all on the next video, but I will say it's gonna be a pretty big one. We're once again returning to the world of the Railway series, and it has required a ton of research. It may be a little quiet here for a couple weeks while I finish that, but it is on the way. I'm always working on something. And that's all I got for you today. A big thank you to my patrons for, as always, being so supportive. You all are awesome. I'll go ahead and let the music play out to give all your names a chance to appear on the screen here. Have a great day, all, and I'll see you all in the next one.